How BEE was intended to grow black wealth in South Africa. Most wealth schemes have seen the super rich benefiting from buying minority stakes in white-owned businesses. Many smaller entrepreneurs have seen slow growth and stayed at the bottom of the pyramid. Joining us now to tell us more about the new BEE codes and how this will affect black entrepreneurs joining me is Zweli Gwebityala. He's the head of strategies at Nascence Advisory and Research. Luzuko Koti, head of GetBiz Media, joins us here, and Jana Marais from Finweek, our Finweek editor, is still here. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Jana, you're still here with me. Zweli, let me start with you. Sorry for totally butchering your surname, but I will get it right. We were talking about getting black entrepreneurs to not just be spectators. What do you think have been the challenges that have put hindrances to black entrepreneurs being active?
Yeah, so I think that the challenges that face black entrepreneurs in South Africa are actually not unique to South African black entrepreneurs. They're challenges that are faced by entrepreneurs from all over the world, right? Access to finance, access to markets, access to skills, access to technologies, etc. What is unique, however, in South Africa is, I guess, the way in which our economy is structured, which is it is really structured in as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, by the way. It's structured to serve sort of larger businesses. For example, if you think about access to finance, right? We do a lot of work at Nascence just helping small entrepreneurs try to access financing for new projects, etc. And that's tough because banks, for example, if you go to a commercial bank, will want 5 years financial statements. You don't have them if you're a new business, right? They want to make sure that you have some kind of security for your loans. You don't have that if you're a new business. And unfortunately, the same can be said for some, government funding agencies. Again, the ask is for financial statements, a level of maturity in the business that you can't yet demonstrate. So we do a lot of work trying to help businesses demonstrate that kind of potential. Now, compare that to, say, the US. If you're trying to start a business in the US, and you see there a very vibrant venture capital market that's willing to throw money at businesses like, look at Snapchat, for example, right? The amount of money they were able to raise in their first sort of round of funding is like dizzying. It's in the billions of US dollars. You couldn't do that in South Africa because the ask is different, because the way in which the economy is set up is different and doesn't support black business. So while the challenges are not unique to South Africa, the way in which we're responding to them are unique to South Africa. And I think, having a vibrant VC market could go a long way in helping South African businesses gain access to finance, for example.
Zweli, I'm going to pause you there. Luzuko, you were nodding. You're obviously in agreement with him, but he mentioned something very key there, access to finance with young businesses. Is this a black issue? Is this not just a young a company issue?
Well, look, most businesses, and this is a big problem in South Africa, that we've got a lot of businesses that do not live beyond a period of 2 years because of a lot of things that involve skills of managing businesses, of making sure that businesses are managed to sustain themselves and to ensure that they live beyond just the point of establishment. And this is a worry for financiers. So you have to have some sort of a base, and this is part of what I think he's talking to, and a service that is very critical in making sure that businesses come into the space and actually establish themselves and live to exist beyond this, is to ensure that they do not live only for a short period of time, and banks can and financing institutions can be comfortable with dealing with small businesses, new businesses, and so on. And one of the things I was talking about earlier, before we came here, is with Zweli, is the skills that we need in the industry that are required for people to come in. And it's safer, for instance, for financiers to look at a business person who is coming from a professional environment, who has worked before, who has dealt with financial statements, who has dealt with annual reports, who has dealt with accounting for resources that they are given as an employee, and now coming into the business to seek for funding. Rather than someone who's totally new, who's never dealt with this, because that's a bigger risk. You do not know whether they are going to be able to account for this, they're going to be able to manage these resources quite But one of the things that is very important now is to appreciate the space that's growing in South Africa, the opportunities that are growing in South Africa, especially with the revised BEE codes.
We're going to touch on those opportunities. Jana, you want to weigh in?
I just want to, I mean, in terms of giving advice to your clients, and maybe from your experience at working for an upstart black-owned business, I mean, so you can't get money from the bank. So what do you tell them? Where should they go? And to what extent, I mean, if you look at big corporates and their supply development programs, for example, I think Anglo Zimele is a good example of that. But also, I mean, there are all these government funding institutions. Should we not be looking at a completely different focus for them, where they actually can provide that angel, capital?
Exactly. So firstly, I mean, what banks are now actually implementing a lot of interesting financing models for SMEs, right? Looking at psychometric testing, for example, some of our big banks are now starting to do as a determinant for whether or not someone can pay. And so that's a very interesting space. But you're completely right in that, looking at government agencies and, the supply development money. I mean, companies in South Africa, if they need to be BE compliant, need to be spending something like 1% of NOPAT on enterprise development just to get those points, right? So there's a ton of money in sort of Anglo, edge growth, etc., that we are in advising our clients, saying, hey, let's try and see how we access those funds, And again, it's about helping people get the knowledge to do that, right? Who knows about Anglo, who knows about edge growth, and the various other institutions that actually disperse these funds. And that's where, people like us come in to close that gap. I was talking to Luzuko earlier about his platform, which is really great, because it closes the second issue I spoke about earlier around access to markets. So it's one thing to say, I want to produce something, but who's going to buy it? And now having a platform that says actually that there's 10 people trying to buy widgets, all of a sudden I'm more confident to make widgets because I know that access. And so it's about closing those information asymmetries really, and that goes a long way in actually encouraging businesses to start up and helping them grow beyond the 2 years that Luzuko mentioned.
Luzuko, you mentioned opportunities when I stopped you, and then you, in the same explanation, you also spoke about skills. Do we have a match here with skills and opportunities?
It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, but sometimes we're looking at the wrong places. We're looking at all the wrong places. One, because what we are referring to now is, knowing where to go and knowing what opportunities exist. The culture that we've always had is that, okay, I'm a black person. I'm going to look for opportunities of buying stakes or shares at a particular company and hope that they grow and make some sort of wealth for myself. But what we have not looked at is what skills or what needs are there in South Africa, and therefore match them with the skills that are required to respond to those needs. Many companies in South Africa right now are seeking services that can be provided by people who actually have these skills. Government is investing a lot of time and resources on FET colleges that are producing the skills that we require. Now, if you're going to make use of those skills to ensure that at least we produce something, at least we are becoming productive as a South African economy, rather than an economy that is really artificial, where people are sitting somewhere hoping something grows, and probably, these really small shares that were put aside for this purpose, only just for black people to get in the business space, rather than for black people to participate fully and actually actively in the economy by making sure that when Transnet says, I'm going to buy so many thousands of locomotives because I'm making a serious transformation of my space, therefore black people who have particular skills in that space. Now, if you are talking about agriculture, what happens there? Because we have a growing population, people are eating every day. What are we doing to make sure that the industries that are funded respond to the demand that daily continues to multiply in that space, because food is required. We have a population that's exploding in Africa, and we have a very, very active middle class that can sustain that particular industry. So I'm saying you have to look at what the market demands right now versus what skills we need to produce before you look at the skills we have. I mean, you have the skills, yes, we have, but most of the people that we have a culture of, I want to get a job, I want to get, a little bit of this and that. We have to start looking at the production of the skills that are going to respond to to the needs that we have, so that we're able to grow the industry.
I'm going to stop you there because Jana is anxiously wanting to get into this.
I see that.
You mentioned the Transnet contract, or big spend.
Yes.
My other question, and maybe that's also for Zweli rather, in terms of how you advise your clients, where I'm sitting, clearly there's a massive opportunity to leverage government spend. If I was a black-owned business, I would want to get a slice of that 4 trillion rand spend that's earmarked. How possible is it actually to do that if you don't know the right people?
I mean, in the past, actually, it was quite difficult because, to your point about knowing the right people, it's saying, hey, where are the tenders when they're coming out, and how do I access them? I think the government over the past few years, though, has done a ton of work to try and make that process way more transparent, right? A few weeks ago, actually, I attended the SAA Supply Engagement Initiative, where they had hundreds of black suppliers in a room, and they literally opened up their supply chain book, and they said, hey, we're looking for, anything from alcohol for a cabin crew to petrol. Apparently they're buying billions of rands worth of jet fuel each year, right? And so the government is doing a lot of this across departments. Just Transnet is another example where they're becoming more and more transparent. So I think certainly for the black entrepreneur today, it's more likely that you're going to get those contracts easier than, say, a few years ago when it was less transparent. So I think a lot of work that the government is doing to get there.
But we also have to go, the digital route, because the process has also been very cumbersome. People think tenders, think opportunities, and they think, how do I get them? How do I access them? Yes. Firstly, just to be on the database of someone who is giving these opportunities is a nightmare. And secondly, to submit, the process of filling the forms, of complying and having all the right documents. So there is information that you only find out only when it's too late, when you've got only one day to submit, and many people really find it very, very frustrating. So one of the things that I think government is beginning to think around now is going online, is making sure that the process is no longer driven by human elements.
We only have a few, like 1 minute left, but I really want to find out, because we have all these challenges, if I am sitting there, I'm a young entrepreneur, what do I need to do to get in so I'm not a spectator, that I am taking part in this economy? Very briefly.
I would say it's about taking that initial risk. Find a market or a product that you're either passionate about or that there's a clear gap in the market for, and go for it. I think the opportunities in South Africa, as we've all been discussing, are out there. It's about finding them and taking the initial risk to start.
Luzuko, 2 seconds.
Well, the most important thing is to appreciate the fact that the markets, the opportunities and the space is growing. Identify what you need, identify what you have skills for, and make sure that when you decide you're going to get involved in it, you do a good job. Because most of the people try to do these things, but they do a terrible job and they get out very quickly. I think it's important about sustainability of your business.
Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much. Big thank you to Zweli Gwebityala, Head of Strategies at Nascence Advisory, told you I'd get it right, and Research, Luzuko Koti, Head of GetBiz Media, and of course Jana Marais, Finweek Editor.